So I appreciate that.
Las Cruces City Councilor Joanna Bencomo says she is used to the critical comments that come with the job, but one incident in March crossed the line.
I was left a voicemail on my city hall phone that left a really explicit death threat. That's obviously been the worst, and it definitely left me shaken up.
Police say the threat came from an individual in El Paso and prompted the FBI to get involved. According to Bencomo, that person is going through the criminal justice system. She has received more messages saying that she deserves to be in prison, and others saying that they will battle her for the good of the city.
I care deeply about representation, that sometimes I do feel almost out of integrity with my values, and asking someone to run for office knowing what I know now, knowing what I have experienced, especially this year. Sometimes I feel like, what am I really inviting people into?
This fear is not unique to Las Cruces. According to the Brennan Center for Justice, more than 40% of local officials say they are less likely to run after receiving abusive language or threats. With 70% of elections going uncontested nationwide in 2024, people had less choices for who to vote for. While there are many reasons why people are driven to violence, one common explanation is the increase in intense rhetoric.
Research suggests that people are way more likely to commit acts of political violence when they have constructed a narrative that supports it.
NMSU professor Dr. Jeff Hunter has done research on how villainization of other politicians can lead to more political violence.
So on January 6, 2001, for example, lots of Trump supporters had constructed a narrative that somebody or something had stolen an election. And so they had a villain, and it led them to political violence. A lot of those emotions and things like that that people really cling to, they're easy for politicians to exploit.
Joanna Bencomo is far from being the only one receiving threats like these. Stories of district attorneys receiving racially motivated threats to county commissioners' houses being shot at can be seen all across New Mexico. State Representative from Alamogordo, John Block, is no exception.
I've gotten a lot of them, I'll tell you. I've gotten them from a guy who I got banned from the Capitol, actually, because of some of the threats that he's given to me. Death threats have come in as well. We've seen some sexual violence threats, some people threatening to rape, threatening to do all these other horrible things.
Block has received messages telling him that he should die, others making homophobic jabs and slews of anti-Semitic messages.
It ebbs and flows. So I would just say it could be related to the election. It also could be related to policy. But at the end of the day, some people have just harassed me because they read my Wikipedia page and they didn't like something that they read.
January 6th is often seen as an example of when political messages have gone too far. Block attended the rally, but says he never trespassed or broke any laws, and he rallied peacefully and patriotically.
What happened on January 6th was political violence. If you look at the people that led people into the Capitol building, that's totally not okay. People who were being violent, beating people, that is not okay. And I think any kind of violence is bad. But when I was in the crowd at the Ellipse on January 6th with tens of thousands of other patriotic Americans to rally with President Trump peacefully and patriotically, that's what it was.
Block also points to other examples of political violence, such as protests and riots after the killing of George Floyd.
We saw all the Black Lives Matter and Antifa protesters in cities like Minneapolis burning down businesses, and that's political violence. When we talk about political violence, I feel like it's important and it's critical to focus on all the aspects of everyone from left to right to center.
According to the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Group, only about 5% of the protests associated with the Black Lives Matter protests were violent. Dr. Hunter says that violent actions can lead to more violence, creating a tough cycle to break.
Anytime there's a weak enforcement of political violence, that tends to bring up more political violence later. So we are at risk of seeing violence that has happened lately not being punished or not being taken care of, not being investigated, causing more violence, because once people see that they can get away with it, they continue to do it.
Many government officials say that criticism is part of the job. However, having to worry about your safety is crossing the line.
People will say, well, you have to deal with it. You signed up for it. It comes with the job. Deal with it. And honestly, again, I think there's a huge difference between being critical of elected officials for the decisions they make. That is something I'm prepared for to deal with, like the public decisions that I'm making and being held accountable for them. There is a huge difference between that and sending threatening, violent, and abusive emails. And we did not sign up for that. No one did.
Illegal threats or intimidation face a maximum punishment of 6 months in jail and a $500 fine in New Mexico. But many experts say more still needs to be done to ensure everyone eligible to run or serve can do so safely. For KRWG Public Media, I'm Noah Race.